Welcome to my analysis of round 7 of this Candidates Tournament. Pretty much the halfway stage, so it's going to be a last sprint to the finish now. Very interestingly, we had the pairing that I think everyone wanted, and that's going to be my game of the day today. We had the leader, Nepo, who's a point clear, facing the second placer, MVL, and Nepo has the black pieces. So Nepo is a point behind. If MVL can win this game, he catches him up and anything can happen in the last half of this fascinating tournament. So the game starts with MVL playing his standard e4 and Nepo playing the French defense, which he played earlier on against Alexenko, so MVL must have been prepared for this. And he follows that game by playing the win-aware variation, knight to c3, and now bishop to b4. Now, this used to be very popular, even going back to the days of Botvinnik, who I suppose was the main world champion who made the French defense, and this move, the popular opening it is. But nowadays, knight to f6, the classical variation, is what most top players are playing. So it's interesting to see Nepo play this bishop b4 move. MVL goes for one of the main lines after c5, a3, and now the capture on c3. And another great player, Bobby Fischer, used to play this line with white. And you can already see it's quite an unbalanced position. Black has lost his dark square bishop, which means his king side can be very weak. And we're going to see white attack that later on, especially the g7 square. But black is aiming for counterplay against c3 and generally on the queen side where these pawns are placed. So Nepo develops with knight to e7 and there are numerous moves here. But h4, Harry, is a very decent move. The idea is to use this pawn to soften up black's king side, try to create some weaknesses with the h-pawn. And in some situations, the rook can either come across and start putting pressure on black's position over there. So black now played queen c7. Another main line is queen to a5. And it was the game Garry Kasparov had where he faced this. And after bishop d2, queen a4 is a common maneuver that a lot of win-aware players play, threatening d4. But Garry Kasparov has proven that h5, giving up this pawn for great development, is a very good idea. And white gets very, very quick development and a nice attack. And you can see here the rook has a very useful square on h4. So queen c7, indirectly hitting c3, and just h5 anyway. And this is the most logical follow-up. In the previous time that Nepo had tried this against Alexenko had played knight to f3 instead. But h5 is much more logical because you leave the queen open to attack g7. There's no knight in the way on f3 there. And if you allow this pawn to get to h6, it can be really bad. Let's just say black develops h6 and you have played g6. There's a major hole here. And white can try to get a bishop in there, or later on with some crafty maneuvering. So we have to get this knight to g4, so maybe something like that, and knight. So that's why Nepo plays h6 to try to hold that up. This has all been seen before, and now rook to b1. A useful square, half open file for the rook. And I think MVL came very well prepared today, so you've got to credit his seconds. Saying that, Nepo is playing extremely quickly here, having prepared this variation beforehand. And he now plays b6, and this is the standard idea. White's light square bishop can be a very good piece, especially if black castles. And black's light square bishop in a lot of French defences, and I know this because I've played the French defence all my life, can be a very bad piece. It's stuck behind these pawns, so black aims to exchange it off on a6, a standard idea. Queen to g4, very good aggressive play. MVL knows what he's got to do in this game. This is his chance maybe to qualify for the World Championships. Okay, if he wins, he becomes equal on points with Nepo, but he gets a very important tie-break win-in, which must count in the tie-break so they finish on the same score at the end of the competition. So he has to go for it if he wants to face the champion, Magnus Carlsen. Rook to g8 played, and now bishop b5 check, and we have Nepo's novelty now played, and played instantaneously. King to f8. Now bishop to d7, it has been played before, but this doesn't really help black's cause. So knight to f8 was black's idea. And all I'm going to say about this is, okay, after bishop d3, which is sensibly getting the bishop away before it's been closed down, I used to play moves like this in the winnerware, and I'm not saying my knowledge is anywhere near as good as Nepo's, but before I was even able to grow a beard, I gave up these ideas in this winnerware with black, because I always got checkmated. I never was able to get my rook in the game, and I just hated defending the king side like this, and I started then to play the French defense in a much more aggressive fashion. So instinctively, I don't like this. I mean, it might be okay, but you're going to have to defend at some point with your king over there and your rook tucked in. So you have to get your queenside play. It's very sharp opening for Nepo to play in a position where a draw would be very good. You know, hindsight's a lovely thing, but in hindsight, maybe he should have played the Berlin or, you know, some other opening where he could try to, you know, drag down white's initiative. Bishop to a6 now played, and now very clever move, d takes c5. And this is a very nice move, and this kind of way of playing for white was never popular going back to the days of Botvinnik, but it was found to be a decent idea. I guess came about 15 years ago, and the principle is white generally wants to open up the position because he's got the two bishops, and this bishop here will become a lot stronger if he's able to open up the structure, obviously against black's king as well. So now bishop takes d3 was played, because there are some ideas of taking on b8 in certain situations. Pawn takes, and now knight to d7. And this is you know, Nepo's an expert in the Grunfeld, and this is an idea from the Grunfeld where you try to allow white to take that pawn. Of course, this is not possible here because of the check on c3. And now after d4, b takes c5, things kind of get back to normal. Very clever play now from MVL. Queen to d1. The queen has done its damage over on the king side. It's forced these kind of bad moves from black because black can't castle. And now the queen side becomes very important. You can see how MVL's rook is brilliantly placed. You have to stop queen a4. So queen a5, now bishop d2, and here rook to b8. Now there's no time to really grab this pawn on a3. I mean, you could say in a bad position you should grab material, but here white's attack plays itself. White will simply castle, and white is now ready to throw something like Freddy up the board. The rook can come in. There's real big initiative here, and the problem that black has is these guys on the king side. Very hard to sort them out. So black is effectively playing a rook down. So rook to b8 makes more sense, trying to hold up that area of the board. And now knight to e2, developing to a sensible square, defending both pawns. And here, I think what I would say is a very telling mistake. If you ever have to play c4 as black in these French defense structures, you know that things have gone wrong. You may be wondering, well, why is that, Simon? And the point is that you don't have any active play now or any way to break down this incredibly strong central position. It was Alekhine who said that as white, if you can secure a pawn on e5, you're nearly always guaranteed a good attack against your opponent's king. And one of the main ideas of the French defense is you play c5 to attack d4. You have to attack the square. So as soon as you lock it down with a move like c4, you can no longer get this pressure and you're really in trouble. So maybe something like king to e8 should have been played, with the king trying to come over here. I mean, I don't like it, but I think you have to leave this option open to take on d4 at some point. It's a very tough position. So we had c4, and now just very natural moves from MVL. MVL now castles, of course, rook b6, queen c2, and now rook to h8. And here we see an idea that was, again, I don't know about taken or stolen. You can't say stolen, but I remember famous games with Bobby Fischer used to play this exact idea. I think he beat Macau Tao with this maneuver in the French defence. Okay, a slightly different variation, but it's the concepts which are important. If you know the concepts, you'll better use them in your own game. And it's natural to play the next idea. White can't break through quite yet, so he aims to increase his piece potential first. His rook is okay, his queen is okay, his knight doesn't have any great, but the bishop is not good. And now he plays the brilliant idea a4. And if the bishop gets to a3, just look how fantastic that piece becomes. It's a real problem for French defence players when this bishop gets to life. So a4, a class act. King e8, and now another brilliant concept, rook to b4. And as MVL said afterwards, this was a very strong idea. In the spirit of Petrosian, who was known for his exchange sacrifices, he's willing to let this rook drop if it gives him some tempo and gets rid of this knight on e7. The knight on e7 is black's best knight because it defends f5, meaning it stops the f-pawn from advancing. The knight on d7 doesn't do much. And after knight to c6, MVL just played f4. Very brave play from MVL. He knows he has to win this game, but he really plays so well under pressure, which is a sign of a champion. And he now is playing on both sides of the board. He's aiming to bash through on the king's side. And it shows just how bad black's position is because Nepo goes back to defend that move. Had Nepo accepted the rook, well, okay, there is an argument for saying if you've got a bad position, take some extra material. But after queen a6, rook takes not possible because queen c3, b5 and something like queen b7, this f5 move just looks absolutely phenomenal. Now, if black could castle here, it might be all right, but he's actually moved his king and his rook, as I learnt as a young child losing many games in the win-aware variation, hence why I moved to classical. And this looks extremely scary. I mean, the bishop is coming to b4, cutting across. We might better get our queen to g6. I mean, this is a dream attacking position. So this is why Nepo tried king e8, but already, let's just fast forward a little bit there. After knight e7, sorry, that's why he tried knight to e7. But now rook b1, f5, a desperate attempt to close down the king side. But now even better, brilliant play. Rook to b5, queen to a6, and now bishop to c1. The last piece comes in. King to f7, and here bishop to a3, rook to b8. So it might look like Nepo has broken his problems down to a defensive structure. He's got this wall here and he's managed to blockade, but the next move is very thematic for this position. I mean, MVL's done everything right. He's got his pieces to great squares. Now you've got to look for the break. You need to break down your opponent's defensive position, and often pawn breaks are the simplest way to do that. So after bishop takes e7, okay, that bishop was great, but he's getting rid of this very important defensive knight, because now that black's pieces are all over on the queen side, he plays the pawn break g4, and this is why he's given up his bishop, to take control of this diagonal. And white's pieces are flying in on both sides of the board. It's very uncomfortable for Nepo. Rook takes b5, and Nepo thinks that grabbing a pawn is maybe the best chance, but now white opens up that area of the board. Rook takes b1, queen takes b1, and things are bad. E takes f5. If we try rushing in here, there's not an immediate follow-up, and black may be able to generate counterplay. So very accurate play now from MVL. Knight to g3. This knight will come in, and we hold up any counterplay for the time being. It really should just be a matter of time now. Queen to b6. Black would love to exchange queens, but it's not going to happen. The knight comes in with check, and now a very important move, queen a3. Again, keeping absolute control of the back rank, having ideas. The bishop went there, now the queen wants to come in, and it also holds up the advance of the a-pawn. Queen e6 was played in the game. If a5 is played, then the simple knight to e3, and black's pawns drop, and so does his position. Queen to e6, and here the knight just pops back. Queen g4 may look a little bit scary, but after king to g2, it's game over. Absolutely astonishing play. Black did take on f4. A better chance might have been g6, but it shows just how well MVL was calculating, as in the press conference he said he had the line queen to a3 prepared. And after a king move, the queen dives into e6. Black's counterplay with g takes h5 and h4 is a little bit slow because now e6. Let's say the knight moves because there's a big check threatened, so knight to f8. And here f5, and after h4, queen to b8. Just shows you how well these guys calculate. And queen to b8 forces king e7. And now this brilliant move, f6 check. And the king has to take one of these pawns, and after king takes f6, there's queen takes knight check. This will of course be winning because we're going to swap queens off, as hopefully you can see. And if the king takes the other pawn, king takes e6, well again, there's some very strong checks coming on, and it's the same kind of idea with queen e5 in this case. We don't even need to exchange queens. So the game ended with queen takes f4, and now the queen just works its way in. This knight is very good at defending the checks. The knight is a great defender against a queen. King can just come to h3. So black plays king e7, and now queen a3 and queen d6. This queen dominating the board, just threatening to pick up some pawns. g5 a bit slow. White simply takes it, and after h5, g7, and Nepo resigns. What a brilliant game from MVL. When the pressure's on and people perform, that's when the real champions are shown. And MVL played like an absolute hero and a champion there, and a really important game to catch Nepo up. Now MVL and Nepo on the same score group with a mass of players behind them by 1 point. So anything can happen, but these two are favourite at the moment. But MVL is rolling. Could it be a fairy tale finish with the late entrance, a substitute coming in to win a place against Magnus? Dreams can come true. Remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much for taking some time to watch it. Cheers and goodbye for now.